Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland. Facepalmamerica.com is where you can go to get more information on the show. I was listening to the Trillbilly Workers Party podcast the other day, as I do, and we've had Tom Sexton on the show before, and I was listening to an interview with an author on this fascinating book, and I said to myself, I've got to read this book. I've got to have a conversation with the author because this is really amazing to me. The name of the book is Jonathan Abernathy, You Are Kind, and the name of the author is Molly McGhee. You are originally from Nashville, Molly, but you teach now at Columbia University. Welcome to Facepalm America. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my episode with the Trillbilly.
Yeah, no, they are good folks, and we're on a similar wavelength, I think, in terms of the kinds of things that interest us and pick out. And I swear it's not just me cribbing their excellent style. I wanted to start out by saying that just in terms of my personal existence, I think one of my proudest moments as a father has been convincing my college-bound daughter not to take out student loans.
Good for you.
And
Good for you.
It was in a way it's a difficult decision because I think so many of us, certainly myself, hang on to these aspects of the American dream. So
right.
we cling so tightly to them. And to have your daughter, go to college and go and in the same time frame that I did. I was incredibly lucky as a Gen Xer, someone who went to school, went to college in the mid '90s. I was very fortunate that my dad was poor enough so that I could get a Pell Grant. And I had everything just paid for, but we were a little more successful in some ways, and so that wasn't an option. And in spite of the fact that you had a kind of like community college to state college pipeline, and in Oregon you shell out some money for that, although it's still not nearly enough. It's still this. I mean, you want to say, okay, you've got the dream job, and you've got the dream house, and you've got the dream degree, and when part of that is missing, you feel like, and I think in so many instances in this book that I've read so far, Jonathan Abernathy feels like he's failed. He is the one to blame, that he hasn't lived up to what the correct standards are. And I think part of what you're illustrating an awful lot of different things, is just complete bullshit. Like people are trapped in a system that bears down on every aspect of their lives, waking and otherwise, and tries to extract everything that it possibly can from them. So.
In ways we don't even know, in ways we can comprehend as well, that aren't made visible to us.
Yeah, no, it really is. It occurred to me like a little bit before we started talking, is that there's a quote from Mark Fisher: "Capitalism seamlessly occupies the horizons of the thinkable," and I'm wondering if you think it's done the same thing to the horizons of the dreamable.
I definitely think so.
Certainly trying to, isn't it?
It's certainly trying to. I read this really interesting essay after, having a conversation with the writer, called "Student Debt Has Killed the Plot." And it's the ways that debt has sort of taken over narrative. And I think capitalism has sort of done this too, right? Like, it's omnipresent. Yeah. It is all consuming to a point where we can't exactly move forward in our lives.
Yeah. It's very, very difficult to escape. And we have these like convenient little devices with us like 24/7
all the time. And it's keeping us tuned in, and it's keeping us working. I think it's really interesting to me whenever France protests, because don't they have laws saying they like can't receive emails after a certain
I
time at
love
night?
that. I
And
absolutely love that.
I
It's
just
almost impossible to imagine in our society that
it
that could
is
be the
impossible
case.
to imagine. And it's amazing like what their standards for themselves are and how pathetic our standards for
Yeah,
ourselves are as Americans. We just really think work is the answer. We think if we can work hard enough, we will solve our life. And it's
yeah,
just not true. And it's really sad that it's not true, because we are a nation that has been built on the myth of the individual.
yeah, yeah. No, that's absolutely correct, and it's been reinforced and taught and re-reflected back to us again and again in so many different obvious and subtle ways.
It's in our mythologies. It's very hard to separate the the idea behind motivations, right? We don't always realize like how deeply something has sort of burrowed into us until it's a little too late.
Yeah, down to the language that we speak, down to the very words that we use and the way that we construct our sentences and form our thoughts. I was talking to someone in the last few days who developed this very interesting guidebook about how
Mm.
people speak about war and the
Mm.
words that both we and that people in the media use when they're
Mm-hmm.
discussing war. And some of the most obvious examples are collateral damage instead of
Mm-hmm.
civilian death, or
Right.
or casualty instead of a death, a killing or an injury. And
Right.
you could apply the same thing to to capitalism and the way that we talk about things, like the way that we refer to, you know, job creators, the way we talk about the way that we assume the economy and the way that people report about it should be contained just within a stock market report,
Right.
and the way that frames the discussion. They really kind of have like captured the horizons of our reality, and to a large degree, I think the horizons of our dreams. If they had captured it entirely, I don't think you ever would have written this book. So I think there is hope, but they've done a pretty damn good job, haven't they?
They've done a good job, and they've made it feel seamless. They've made this constant feeling of stress and overwork and hopelessness feel like it is the default.
Yeah,
It has happened to us so gradually over the course of generations that some of the realities of working life that were considered must-haves in like the 1940s or 1950s, we don't have them at all. We are
yeah,
always able to be contacted. We are always reachable.
yeah,
We have fewer vacation days now than medieval peasants had.
yeah,
Isn't that insane? That's, to
yeah.
me, I think when I learned that, that's when it really drove it home for me, is that government systems in medieval times had more holidays built in so that the population could have mandated rest, because they
Right.
realized that the feudal lords would work them to death if they didn't have mandated rest periods.
Yeah,
And there's all these like think pieces about how we're moving into sort of feudal capitalism, and to me that seems very obvious. You have workers like, or you have bosses like Elon Musk, right? Who's like, hey, if you're not willing to sleep in my compound to work on X.com, you're fired. We're letting you go. That's
yeah.
just insane. It's like, that's another person's life. That's someone's life.
Yeah, and what does that do to yourself? Because like the reports that you hear about Elon Musk are that he sleeps a very small number of hours per night. And to me, at least in terms of what he's projecting publicly, he comes across as someone who is like suffering some pretty severe mental health impacts from living out what he is trying to impose upon other people.
Sleep deprivation, I think, is one of the number one causes of madness.
Yeah.
I am an insomniac, and so that's how this book was kind of born for me. Is I was spending a lot of time sleepless and anxious, and there's something that going for a long period of time without sleep does to the body that is just insane. I think we really sort of don't understand how important sleep is for our mental hygiene and just our personal health. It's incredibly important. We're still learning what it even does for us. It's a great mystery.
I can't tell you how much more effective I feel, the morning after a decent night's sleep, where I can remember a few dreams than I do when I know it's been a choppy night's sleep. It just makes an incredible world of difference. And I guess sort of on a metaphorical level, you need that retreat into dreams and into the space of the fantasy to refresh yourself from the reality that exists around us. I mean, that's probably true. That's probably true of all ages, let alone late stage capitalism. But I think it's particularly true today.
Our lives are so confusing, and all day long we are being bombarded by other people's perspective on our lives. Sleep is really the only time when we can process what has happened to us without sort of the biases of other people encumbering that narrative. It's when we sort of sort ourselves. It's when we figure out what it is that we're doing, and it's when we process sort of the horrors that we don't know how to verbalize.
Yeah.
We, for us, I just feel like sleep is so important.
It is.
And it is so undervalued. And I don't know about you, but going to bed, the biggest thing that keeps me up is worrying about work the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just worrying about all the things I didn't do or could have done differently.
I still occasionally, I am, 25 years past college, and I still, from time to time at this point, have, terror dreams about something that I forgot to turn in elementary school, high school, college, what have you. I mean, that sticks with me to this day. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just not taking things seriously enough, but because I've been through enough things in my life where you think I should be having like dreams about like the real difficulties that I have in my life. And I've had a few, but I have far fewer of those than I do of just like, shit, I forgot to turn something in, or it's due today. Like that sticks with me from childhood and young adulthood.
I mean, when we're children, we aren't given control over anything. We can't even live out our preferences for the most part. So it makes sense to me that those are your most visceral memories of helplessness. Yeah. As you get older, you kind of learn, you're at the point in your life where maybe you're like, yeah, this is bad, but it's not going to kill me, Like I used to hear.
I guess there's a certain amount of perspective there. Yeah.
When my parents would say like, it's bad, but I'm not dead yet. And I just did not get it as a kid. I was like, well, what do you mean? This sucks ass. Like, this is bad. This is bad. But it's like, they knew something I did not, which is that time goes on. And I think we as Americans have kind of forgotten that a little bit.
Well, you're right, because everything that surrounds us in the media and all of our immediacy like hooks us into the current moment, and it's difficult to remember that. But just drawing another example from my life, our house burned down in a wildfire.